On this episode of Locked On Lightning, the playoffs are finally here. We're a day away from game one. Kasey Hudson of Pucks and Bolts stops by. We talk about it all, but first, let's play that music.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. This episode of Locked On Lightning is brought to you by HelloFresh. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Go to HelloFresh.com/NHL60 and use code NHL60 for 60% off, free shipping. Today on Locked On Lightning, I am joined by Pucks and Bolts host Kasey Hudson. Kasey, welcome to the show. First appearance on Locked On Lightning. We've been talking about it for a while, but we finally got you on. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And what a better time than playoffs so that we can get through, I don't know, what we're about to expect here. My nerves are all over the place. My confidence is all over the place. But again, I have a good feeling in the midst of all of that.
Right, absolutely. I think we just got done talking on your show and we agreed, I said my optimism was at 5 out of 10. Yours, I feel like you're a little bit more confident than I am, even though you seem like you're a little bit more nervous than I am. But before we get into any playoffs talk, I really want to get your opinion on, what were your expectations going into this season, and have they changed as the season went on for what the Lightning accomplished during the regular season?
Oh my gosh, yeah, they absolutely changed. I think one thing maybe growing up in Tampa that I've got to hang on is the emotional roller coaster that is the Tampa Bay Lightning, no matter what the pieces are, the health is, no matter what revolves around this team, the roller coaster is there. My expectations starting off the season, I want to say, were maybe a little low. I wanted to see how they were going to adjust without guys like Ryan McDonough, Andre Palat, especially with the role that Palat played in playoffs. I mean, we called him Playoff Pally. So kind of seeing how these new pieces were going to gel. Were we going to see more out of Brandon Hagel? There were so many question marks heading into this season, maybe for the first time in about 2 or 3 years for me personally. They didn't start off the strongest. There was some inconsistency. And then after, they got back from their West Coast tour, we started to see a different team come together. We saw them start to form an identity with these new guys. And then, of course, before the second half of the season officially got here, they were riding such a high. Their home streak was ridiculous. You were starting to see other lines get involved versus just the top line of Hagel, Point, and Cooch. So an emotional roller coaster to describe it all. Didn't know what to expect in the beginning, had lower expectations, and then kind of gained confidence once I started to see this group come together heading into the second half of the season before All-Star Week specifically, to say the least.
Yeah, I think that mine were. It's funny that you said they were kind of drawn back in terms of your expectations. Mine were actually just another Eastern Conference Finals appearance.
Really?
So it's funny. I think our opinions of this team flip-flopped as the season went on. So now that the regular season's over, and the Lightning, like we just spoke about on your show, finished on I guess we could say a bumpy slide there to end the season. What are your expectations for this series? Now, the Lightning going in a rematch, there's always that expectation that the intensity is going to be off the charts. Now you sprinkle that the fact that these teams are playing 2 years in a row. They're starting in Toronto. Toronto has a ton to prove in some way. I said on your show for my listeners that maybe haven't been able to listen yet, that I feel like Toronto is going to be the more relaxed team in this. I feel like Tampa is going to be more so the team that we're not finished yet attitude. What are your expectations for this series?
They kind of go back and forth a little bit, because where you mentioned the fact that the Toronto Maple Leafs may be a little bit more relaxed, I think it's because I think they have a better grasp on their identity. Most of these guys have been together, the pieces that have come in. I think it's just a different looking team in comparison to the Lightning, while they have a lot of similarities. I think the Lightning, while they have so many great veterans and unique and different veteran perspectives, they're getting a little heavy on the younger side. So you and I also talked about this on my show. They're not calling it a rebuild yet, but the bottom line is that that's kind of the big picture of things. And I think Toronto already kind of went through their semi-rebuild phase. So my expectation for this series is going to be the fact that I love in hockey, you're never going to get the same team twice. So a lot of what happened last year isn't even going to matter between new pieces and confidence level. And I think that that's going to actually play in the Lightning's favor. I think that these young guys want to prove themselves. I think that the way that hockey is growing and changing, the Lightning kind of have a new identity where they're not just a skilled, fast team. They've brought a huge element of physicality into their game as of late. You've got multiple quality forecheckers. You've got multiple guys that don't mind being physical, that don't mind putting their body on the line. Everyone kind of talks so much about Ryan McDonagh, and while I couldn't agree more at how we felt his absence, I think we're not giving enough credit to how many guys now will put their body on the line because Ryan McDonagh is not in the lineup. So that's where I think we flip roles, and I have a lot more confidence in the Lightning. I think that we don't really know this team. I think we saw glimmers of what they could be, and I think this playoff series is going to show us exactly who they are, and I have confidence in who I think they're going to become.
Now, you spoke about players that are going to put their bodies on the line, and last two times you and I spoke, we spoke extensively about Tanner Jeannot, but the one player that I feel like has been overlooked the last couple of weeks since he came to the Lightning has been Mikey essemont. I think he's going to be vital towards this team. He kind of reminds me, if you remember, some Lightning fans may remember, he kind of reminds me of a bigger Mitchell Stevens. How Mitchell Stevens was in 2020 for this team. I don't know if he's going to have some sort of that. I don't know if he's going to have the same ability in the faceoff circles that we saw from Stevens. As if you might remember, won a big faceoff against Dallas in the deciding game of that series that eventually sealed the Lightning win in that series because, you know, the Stars had the odd man advantage and they had the faceoff in the Lightning zone with, I would say, probably 5-10 seconds left that could have led to overtime. But what do you see from Mikey essemont, and what do you expect from him in this series? If, you know, obviously there's always that question mark, how much playing time is John Cooper going to give him? But if given the time, what are you expecting from Mikey essemont?
I'm actually so glad that you asked this because I feel like I'm standing on an island alone of how much expectation I have out of essemont. For starters, when he first got with the Lightning, I liked what he was doing. He was racking up on shots on goal. He wasn't afraid or hesitant to take a shot, which we know is sometimes a kryptonite with this team. A lot of passing, some hesitation, and all the things. I thought that he could bring an element to this game where he would kind of rub off on the guys to just, you know, start getting those shots going. He's so good with his puck handling skills. I don't think that anyone's talked about that enough. Even through traffic, he has a great tendency to keep the puck on his stick. And he's such an antagonist around the net. He plays a tight game around the net, which can be a headache for goalies. I think he needs more time. And I feel like we also started to see good things when, unfortunately, Jeannot went out of the lineup and essemont got bumped up. He's not a fourth line guy. So after they pulled him from the fourth line and put him on the third, we were seeing more of what his skill set could be. He picked up an assist versus the Senators. He had some quality plays there, generating offense for these guys, and then picked up his first goal as a goal. And I thought that goal was spectacular. I mean, the angle was great, which that's something that a couple of years ago, if I had to be nitpicky as a fan, I was like, we need a little more unorthodox scoring going on. And I think essemont could be the kind of guy to give that to this roster. Hit those angles, go for the top shelf, not always be so predictable, but I think he needs more time in the lineup, and I'm hoping that happens in the playoffs because he could be a different look versus the Maple Leafs. They don't know what to expect from him.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm there right with you, Kasey. I think essemont has been phenomenal since he's come to the team. Now, he's not as flashy as what we saw from Nick Paul last year, but he's getting the job done. And I think, you know, with more ice time, we're going to start to see him kind of solidify himself, like you said, as a third line guy instead of a fourth line guy. Now, are there any other players on this team that you think that are not getting the right amount of attention that could potentially, because we spoke about this on your show, you know, how Braden Point's lack there of talk around him the last couple of years and maybe even this year, that could benefit this Tampa Bay team. But you know, as you look down the roster, are there any players that are not getting the attention that could potentially be one of those top players that could help the Lightning get past Toronto?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the first guys you and I talked about, or actually the second after Braden Point, was Brandon Hagel. He didn't know what his role was going to be with this team. He got thrown on the third line as soon as he got here last year. Yeah, he picked up 1 goal versus Toronto, but you could tell he was finding his footing. And then he goes and has a 30-goal season this year, and picks up 64 points with the guys, which was tremendous. So I think that he's going to have that playoff gear. And I also am putting a lot of expectation on him because I think swag plays a huge role these days. And Hagel has it. He likes to be cocky after he scores. He likes to get in these guys' face, and it gets in their head. And if you can play the mental battle in playoffs, you're going to give yourself a leg up. So that's where I kind of give more conversation to Brandon Hagel and leading the league in takeaways and all the things that he brought to this team this season that was kind of unexpected. I think that that's going to travel well in playoffs. I kind of have to say, I'm going to go with Anthony Cirelli. You and I touched on him a little bit. I think Cirelli is a gamer. He came in, I think December 3rd was like his first game back with the team. So to have a shorter season, 11 goals, 18 assists, 29 points, 2 or 3 of those goals being shorthanded goals. And now he's kind of got his speed under control. He's not ending up in the back of the opponent's net every time he charges at them, which is great. So I think that you said it perfectly on Pucks and Bolts that now that he's come in later in the season, played from December till now, he's so fresh. He's going to be able to kind of produce extra time on the ice. And he doesn't tire, even though he has such a physical element to his game. He's the pest that you want on your side. And I think because he's going to be so fresh in this, that now his production is going to pick up in this postseason. He's so reliable. He started to pick up time in the faceoff circle. And something else to note, because you mentioned it when you mentioned Stevens, is that one of the advantages Toronto had on Lightning last year, even though Lightning pulled off the series, every single game, all 7 games, they killed the Lightning in the faceoff circle. This year, the Lightning were very productive in the faceoff circle for majority of the season, and I think that's an edge that they'll have. Cirelli plays a role in that. A healthy Steven Stamkos plays a role in that. Even Bellemare has his moments, and Nick Paul has been a reliable guy in the circle. So I'm going to go with Brandon Hagel, Anthony Cirelli, and I don't want to say too much about Nick Paul yet. I think he needs to breathe for a second and maybe show up later in the series.
Yeah, I don't see any problems with the players that you just listed. So, as with any hockey team, I think once you get a handful of guys to start producing, I think everybody else follows suit. Now, on to the great, exciting part of all this, the burning question. What are your predictions for this series, and how long do you think it's going to go?
Oh my gosh, my worst nightmare. You want to know why this question is so tough for me? Because when I first started covering hockey, everyone was like, you can't lean too much in any direction because superstitions and stuff. So I was scared that I was going to ruin everything just by having a heavy opinion. I've kind of gotten over that by now. I agree with you. I think 7 games is going to be the mark with this one. They're just matched up so tightly statistically, and that's where you kind of hope that the right veteran group is going to help them cross the finish line and pull off that win, or, these underestimated guys. I think the Lightning have more underestimated guys than the Maple Leafs do, and I think that's going to play in their favor. So I'm going to go with 7 games. Lightning take it. I think they make it at least to round 2. And you also mentioned the fact that Andrei Vasilevskiy has that playoff gear that nobody can touch quite yet. And until he does otherwise, you've got to give him the credit that he is due. And I think Vasi is going to pull this one through for them as well.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he has shown a lot of uptick in his play, even though it hasn't always resulted in a win for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think Vasilevskiy has really improved and has come a long way since the beginning of the season. So we'll definitely have you back as the series progresses. Kasey, thank you for coming on the show. Guys and gals, you could follow Kasey at the Sports Case. Go listen to Pucks and Bolts podcast. It's a great podcast about Tampa Bay Lightning. And yeah, we'll have you on in the near future, Kasey. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, Adam. It's always fun. I enjoy talking with you.
We'll get back to the show in just a little bit, but first I want to talk about our friends at Athletic Greens. Now, did you know that Athletic Greens is lifestyle friendly? Whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, Athletic Greens is the right choice with you. It contains just 1 gram of sugar with no GMOs and no tasty chemicals. And the best part about it is that it costs you less than $3 a day. So right now it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with the convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. So once again, thanks to Kasey Hudson of the Pucks and Bolts podcast for coming on, chalking it up about the upcoming series against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And this is going to be an exciting one. It really is. I don't know. I think I'm more excited this year about this series than I was last year. And I just think because really at the end of the day, we know what we're going to get in terms of in terms of intensity. You know, the teams have, at least for the Lightning side, have changed a little bit since last year. And like Kasey said in our segment, I agree 100%. This Lightning team is still trying to find themselves. I think they're still trying to find their identity, and she hit the nail right on the head. We've been talking about it all season long here on Locked On Lightning, how really the problem with the Lightning has been their inconsistency. And I think that really what it comes down to is that they haven't been able to find that style of play or kind of that mindset and that chemistry with each other that we have seen in years past, where it has led to 3 straight Stanley Cup final appearances, where it's led to back-to-back Stanley Cup finals, Stanley Cup championships. So it's kind of a fun process for us as people who get to look on the outside, who obviously aren't playing. We get to look and see the whole process unfold from the outside and kind of see these guys figure it out. Now, obviously, when as exciting as that is, it's going to be stressful to really see the Lightning go and get this under control right away. I've spoke about it on the Pucks and Bolts podcast. I spoke about it today with Kasey as well, how really the thing that has plagued the Lightning throughout the course of the season has been their inability to come in 2 games early on and take advantage and really get things going. In most cases, they've been more of a reactionary team than rather a proactive team. So really it's wishful thinking, especially in an environment such as Toronto, where the Lightning are going to have to go out and really get things going early on, because very hostile environment. The Leafs, and I still firmly believe that they are in somewhat of the advantage right now, especially these first couple of games, not because they're at home, but because I feel like to a certain degree, they know who they are. They know what to expect from themselves, where this Lightning team, you've dealt with injury, you've dealt with lines consistently being changed. The last couple of weeks, we've had this giant question mark as to what exactly is going on with John Cooper in terms of having Pat Maroon on the 3rd, Corey Perry on the 4th, as well as now thrown into the gates, thrown into the equation. John Cooper said today that we're not going to expect Tanner Jeannot to be in game 1 of this one, and we might see him in the series. As to the likelihood of seeing him, I think the old cliche is if he could skate, he'll play. And I think that's what the Lightning are probably looking at. So right now, I think more so the idea or the state of mind when it comes to Tanner Jeannot's availability is really they know he could skate. I think that's what we could all agree on, and that he could be effective. But the thing is that if you play him in game 1, is that going to set him back for the rest of the series? I really think that the Lightning are taking that into account. And, it would be great to have him in the lineup in game 1. But at the same time, is it worth playing him in game 1 if you don't have him for 2 through 4? And as we all know in the playoffs, really a guy like Tanner Jeannot, a guy like Mikey Essemont, those players who could kind of do a little bit of everything. And make no mistake, Mikey Essemont has really shown that he could do a little bit of everything, even though it hasn't really resulted in goals or points. Um, he has the talent, he has the potential to. And maybe I'm kind of reaching for the stars here, or maybe this is just wishful thinking. But I said it on the show early. I believe it was maybe this show, the last segment, or maybe the previous show with Kasey Hudson on Pucks and Bolts, but I said he kind of reminds me in a certain way of Mitchell Stevens, kind of what we saw from him a couple of seasons ago. So the Lightning have the players. Let's face it, they have the players. They have the talent to stack up with Toronto. As always, as the issue is with this team, it's all a matter of execution. It's all a matter of if this team is going to be able to go out there with the right personnel at the right times, as well as capitalize on the advantages that are given to them. Special teams, I mean, we all know all season they have been absolutely atrocious. Don't let the stats fool you. So I'm excited for this playoffs series. I'm excited for game one because I really think, in contrast to what we saw last year, and I'm still flip-flopping on this. You might hear me contradict myself multiple times throughout the course of the series, but or at least from now and then tomorrow's show. I'm a firm believer that I think that game one is going to be very telling of what we'll see out of this team going forward. At the same time, I wouldn't be the least surprised if we see more so of a kind of a repeat of what last year was. Game one, fall flat. Game two, come out of the gates. Not necessarily that's the case, what happened last year, but I'm saying we might see kind of something similar with what we saw from the Lightning last year in the playoffs, just pretty much up and down as the series progresses. So really, I think that, and I will die on this hill until I will die on this hill forever. It really falls back on the question for the Lightning: can they play well enough to give Andre Vasilevsky a chance in net to be effective? So wrapping things up on the show, once again, huge thanks to Kasey Hudson of the Pucks and Bolts podcast. Always love speaking with her. Always love talking about Lightning hockey. We're going to have her on probably multiple times throughout the course of the playoffs, at least for as long as Tampa is in the playoff hunt. I think that this is going to be an incredible series. It's going to go 7. I think the Lightning, if it gets to 7, all bets are off. I think that I've seen some people online. I don't know if these were overconfident Lightning fans or maybe Maple Leaf fans kind of trying to curse the Lightning or give them bad luck. But I saw some Lightning in 5 predictions. I saw some Lightning in 6, whatever. I'd be very shocked. And I think Maple Leaf fans should be shocked as well for their side in terms of the outcome. I think any outcome, whether it be Leafs winning the series or Lightning winning the series, I would be very shocked if we're sitting here and not talking about a game 7. I'd be very shocked. I just think these teams, despite the trouble that the Lightning have had throughout the course of this season and the issues that they have had, especially with Toronto. I mean, they played decent in that last game against them. I still think that there was, at that point in time, a lot to be desired in that game. I still think that, there were some things that the Lightning could have worked on. And I think that last game of the season against Detroit wasn't exactly telling of what kind of team we're going to get in game 1. But I think that there is really no unless the Lightning or the Maple Leafs have a complete meltdown in net. I think that this is going to go 7. The Maple Leafs have a very good goaltending situation there, as do the Lightning. Vasilevsky has really turned it on in recent weeks. So excited to see that. So in the meantime, subscribe to the podcast, follow us wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We are also available on YouTube, so go ahead and subscribe to that. And the best part about all of that is that we are available wherever for free. Also subscribe to us on our social media pages, LO_Lightning on Twitter, as well as LockedOn_Lightning on Instagram. Join us back tomorrow where we'll be talking with the hosts of Locked On Toronto Maple Leafs. We're doing a crossover for that. Excited to talk with those guys once again and preview the upcoming series against the Maple Leafs. So in the meantime, that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you in the next one.